Breaking news to bring you now. The former SNP chief executive, Peter Murrell, has been remanded into custody after pleading guilty to embezzling £400,000 from the party. That was at the High Court in Edinburgh in the past few moments. Joining us now, our correspondent Shingi Marike outside the Edinburgh High Court. Tell us more.
Yeah, good morning, Gareth. That's right. In the last few moments, Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the Scottish National Party, was led away from a court in handcuffs by a court official. He will be remanded in custody after pleading guilty to embezzling just over £400,000 worth of party funds. That money was meant to be ring-fenced for the independence effort for the Scottish National Party. But in court, we heard a litany of cases linked to that, a litany of examples linked to that, including the allegations that he used the money towards things like a motorhome, a luxury vehicle, a number of items, a number of retailers as well, from Argos to Fortnum and Mason, as well as he's using his own invoices as well, creating invoices and documents related to the purchase of those documents. In terms of what happens next, we know that he will be sentenced on the 23rd of June at Edinburgh High Court. And we also, just going back over some of this is part of Operation Branchform, that long-running contentious investigation run by Police Scotland. We know as part of that investigation, his now estranged wife, Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister, former leader of the SNP, was also arrested and released without charge and any further investigation, as was Colin Beattie, who was also party treasurer for the SNP as well. But over the course of that hearing, we heard a lengthy indictment there before Peter Murrell stood up and was led away from the court. He has now been remanded in custody.
Shingi, good to have you with us. Let's just take a few moments to kind of remind our viewers some of the other details of this. The original figure that was being mooted by the prosecutors was £459,000. The total sum has fallen to £400,000, 310 and 65 pence. And these offences, it was alleged, to have been carried out between the 12th of August 2010 and then all the way through into the 19th of October 2022. And you can see there Peter Murrell arriving at court, arrived at 10:15, the black bag in the right hand there, the grey suit, white shirt and dark tie as he walks in. And he was SNP chief for 22 years, and this Operation Branchform all stems back to July 2021 when that investigation first began. The first resignation of Peter Murrell was back in March 2023, and then moving on to being arrested the April of that year and charged in April 2024. So this has been a long-running investigation. And Shingi, any sense of what Peter Murrell's mood was like, demeanour was like? We saw those images of him walking into court, and we obviously heard the guilty plea. Is there any more detail as to what was said inside court and maybe what was the atmosphere outside?
Well, I think one of the most telling phrases there from the judge once Peter Murrell was asked to stand up in court was that this was a breach of trust. As I was saying there, this investigation, Operation Branchform, looked into the improper use of funds that were originally ring-fenced for a second referendum, for a second tilt at independence for the SNP. But what actually we heard there in the indictment and those charges that Peter Murrell had pleaded guilty to is that around £400,000 worth went to his personal use. That personal use ranged across a number of retailers. It spent around £80,000, for example, used on Amazon, a number of other retailers named in the indictment, like I said, from Argos to Fortnum and Mason as well. And in terms of his demeanour in court, he walked into court, as you say, early this morning. He got here early and then he walked into court and was led out in handcuffs, which is quite a fall from grace from a politician who was the chief executive of the SNP for around 2 decades, who was a leading figure in the Scottish National Party. And I'm just going over some of the detail in court that we also heard, like you were asking me about. So we know that he's accused of making those purchases using credit cards and charge cards belonging to the SNP, and then using false or inaccurate accounting codes and inserting the items in the wrong way in the party's accounting system across a number of places across a 12-year period. And for that, he is now being remanded in custody, and he'll be sentenced in June.
Let's just take a look at some of the other details of this. Shingi's sticking with us here on Sky News, but just hearing that Lord Young, that was hearing this case, said that this was a gross breach of trust. It was acknowledged also that Peter Murrell had no previous convictions. He's seen there alongside his former wife, Nicola Sturgeon, who, of course, led the party for so many years. She came after Alex Salmond, and, of course, now the party in different hands, but they were a couple that were at the centre of so much of SNP politics and operations. Like I say, Peter Murrell, the chief exec for 22 years. And interesting that the figures here of this case have changed. The original charge was of embezzlement of £459,000. That has dropped by almost £60,000 to £400,000. And just a little bit of court reporting we're seeing, just saying that his demeanour was, quote, impassive through the course of the proceedings. We're going to hear more on the 23rd of June. That is when the sentencing will be held. But the fact that Peter Murrell led from court in handcuffs, a really notable development in this case. And just a reminder, there's going to be plenty more on this story on the Sky News website and the Sky News app. The team in our Millbank Political Office will be bringing together all of those details. And Shingy, just remind us exactly kind of some of the detail behind this case, some of the allegations that have been made previously that Peter Murrell has pleaded guilty to.
Yeah, that's right. The figure in the indictment now closer to £400,000 of embezzlement over the course of a 12-year period. And just looking at some of the items mentioned in that indictment, we can see a VW Golf, a Jaguar I-Pace car, as well as a motorhome as well. And further detail looking at how false and inaccurate accounting codes and descriptions were used in the party's accounting system. Amazon purchases mentioned among a number of other retailers. And in terms of what happened in court, we saw the indictment read, and then Peter Murrell was asked to stand up after the pleas were entered and then led out of this court in handcuffs. And I'm just going over some more of this because it's extensive. It's quite a few bits and pieces to get through, but we know another example in this indictment is the use or the paying of a fixed penalty ticket at a hospital in Fife as just another example as part of that sum, that figure, £400,000, for which he has now been sentenced for. But what we will be doing over the course of the morning now is poring over the indictment. And I think it's worth mentioning in court, as well as the key figure, that core sum, there are a number of other amendments made to the indictment over the course of the hearing. That was the bulk of the hearing before the sentencing was made. But that key figure there, around £400,000 worth of party funds being used improperly by Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the Scottish National Party, the now estranged husband of the former First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. He is now going to be sentenced in June, remanded in custody.